Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Talent Gap Fireside Chat, where we talk about causes of and solutions to the talent gap. I'm your host, Pete Strauss, and joining me today is Glen Vickers, is head of IT operations and CISO at ABS Wavesite. Welcome, Glen.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Could you give our audience a little background on you and your career?
Yeah, so I've been in IT for it's almost 30 years now. I started in '96 as Packard Bell tech support. So I've been on the ground layer trenches all the way up to where I'm at now. I've worked at a variety of different companies and different industries, from EA Games and gaming studios to retail with Albertsons and Pepsi, oil and gas with Chevron, and now I'm at another software development company, ABS Wavesite. So been around the block quite a long time now.
Absolutely. So I imagine you've picked up some tips and tricks along the way and have seen differences among the different industries, if there are differences in hiring. But I guess broadly in the security industry, do you think this talent gap that people talk about is a real thing? And if so, what would you say it looks like?
I'd say yes and no. So there's a big piece going on right now where agentic AI is threatening the livelihood, or at least perceived livelihood, of individuals in cybersecurity, particularly around SOC and SOAR. I see a few other spaces in that. I also see some people, let's say in the GRC space and mindset, that they were under the previous impression that they don't necessarily have to be technical. They have to understand policy, controls, regulatory compliance, a little bit more lawyerish, I guess you could say, than actually technical. And now they're finding that they have to kind of know Python to live, right? So I don't necessarily say that it's a gap. I think it's like what we see in the IT world, just at the people scale at this point. So previously, used to be said every 6 months, every processor will double in speed, right? Well, that's clearly slowed down a little bit, other than probably the co-processors on graphics card and whatnot. Instead, they just made them smaller and added more cores to a single core unit. So it's no longer a single core processor, it's quad core, 32 gig cores, or 32 cores and whatever else. And the chip's slightly bigger, but more core processing per. In the human sector, you're seeing kind of the same thing, where now technology is ramping faster and you either have to adapt or you're the one that's going to be obsolete and out of a job. So I think that it's less of a risk of a skill or skills gap, more that skills are changing. And if you don't skill up, you become your own gap, is kind of what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess what I worry about is, are we going to see are we seeing currently a net decrease in the number of open jobs broadly in security? Obviously, I think everybody would admit or recognize that jobs are going to change, and maybe some jobs will no longer exist and other jobs will become, now they'll come into existence, basically. So yep. You're going to have that shifting, but do you think that we're going to see a net decrease, or are we seeing a net decrease in the number of jobs?
I do see a little bit of that. We're always being asked on the leadership side to do more with less, is the phrase going around town, if you will. And then there's also a very, very heavy push to automate through AI. But literally this happened 2-3 years ago, I want to say, maybe 4. My timelines get blurry as I get older because my kids are out of college or in college now and all that. So maybe it's a little bit longer than 4, but there was a push a while back where everything needs to be automated. Automated is the key. We need to automate all our processes and reduce workload substantially. And the same scare happens. You're going to automate myself out of a job. And to some extent, that's true, that you would no longer be doing the manual process that you automated, but who's going to maintain and create the automations? Did you skill up to create automation? So the big push for Ansible, YAML coding, things like that, and Python. This is probably just a little bit before Python existed. So it kind of spawned out of that. But it was the same kind of situation that, yes, automation was making things faster. It was moving the industry forward and making you do more with less, so you could automate the process that took you hours to do. You did it in 15 minutes using automation. But that also means you could focus on bigger projects. And what happened there is people got comfortable with what they did. So they basically worked their way out of a job because they didn't skill up their own skill set and then prove themselves. I think we're seeing the same thing here again. And as much as the buzzword goes around, we have a new automation sheriff in town that you can tell it what to do and it'll do it for you. So.
Yeah. Well, I guess I tend to break it down if you look at it from like almost a first principles perspective. If you look at everything as categories of tasks and beyond that, a finite number of tasks, are we decreasing the number of tasks that need to be performed? Are we increasing the number of categories of tasks that need to be performed? You could almost look at it that way, where we're creating new tasks, but we're replacing old tasks with automation, but we are creating new tasks. I guess my question is, are we creating enough new tasks to replace the old tasks to where a human is actually needed there in that loop, or the same amount of humans are needed in that loop moving forward?
Yeah, well, a good example, just to keep it in the cybersecurity space, there's a big push, replace SOC level 1 agents with like an agentic AI, essentially, right? And so all the level 1 agents, which are literally fresh out of college people, are going to be weeded out of a job, supposedly. That's their big primary concern, right? And the tasks that they would normally do in that space would be, you would get a number of alerts or vulnerabilities or threat detections that they would get and then would have to triage as a part of objective troubleshooting. Getting an AI to watch for weird behaviors is kind of working in this space, where, for example, impossible travel is real easy to detect. If somebody's logging in within 5 minutes from one place in China and the other one's in North Virginia, right? Obviously, that's not possible. So how did you manage that? But that could be legit. What if somebody was on one of their machines, happened to be on vacation in China, and they're like, oh crap, I forgot to turn my VPN on, and then all of a sudden they're in actual Virginia. Well, that AI is not going to call the individual and detect whether or not that person actually is where they say they are, because there's no human interaction there to validate that was actually legit, because it was a VPN transfer to a different location, not an actual impossible travel. So there's enough there that human behaviors are not logical. And the problem with AI is it's 100% logical. So it only thinks in a Boolean level logic, and humans do not behave in a Boolean way. So there's enough gap there that normal human behavior has to be a part of the model in some way. So while maybe they're not triaging those level 1 alerts, the ones that are fairly obvious, or they just say, yeah, lock it down and I'll follow up, it's still going to go to a level 1 agent, but the agent is going to be talking and getting tickets from an AI, not going into Defender or going into AWS security and getting those tickets from there. Their AI is going to talk to them. So it's like, hey, this thing just happened. Go check it out. It'll be a quicker response for somebody like on my side, where we want our remediation response times for like the low and medium level vulnerability or threat detection tickets to be not hours, but minutes. So we'll see quicker reaction times to that kind of space, but we'll see also that they basically have to learn with working with an agent, not that the agent replaced them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, all of this kind of makes me think that it's almost like the bar is being raised across the industry for any role, to where, like, if you don't have a certain level of competence or intelligence, there's literally no job that automation or AI couldn't do better than you. It's like you have to be operating at a higher level in order to be employable. So, what about the folks that maybe aren't capable of doing that, or don't have the desire to operate at that level, or, don't necessarily want to spend every waking hour on research and adapting to all the latest? Like, is there a place for those folks in the industry, or no?
Well, with most industries that are of a highly technically skilled level, no, not really. Like, things will change, and if you can't keep up with the change, that's literally on you. There's not much that anyone's going to be able to help in that space. And it's unfortunate, because I've seen a lot of people that I've known throughout my entire career that were in that space at the time when they got into IT. They were like the smartest people in the room. They're the architects, right? But things changed so rapidly, and they just got to, even age is a factor in this space in some level or degree, that they got to a point where they just couldn't keep up because life happened, other things happened. And maybe their way of studying has changed. And that's a good example, right? For those guys that are a little bit older than me, I'll put it that way, you go buy a book and you go read the book. Like, I have a shelf full of books, but I own them and I haven't read them all. And I haven't read them all because I put it on my audiobook and had it read to me. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'll pull out a book and do it on occasion just because it's a little bit more therapeutic than anything. But it's not like I didn't read it. It's not like I didn't get the context out of it. There's a YouTube or LinkedIn Learning video that is exactly the same thing as the book over there on the shelf. But the older guys, they a little bit older than me, they don't learn that way because they've never tried to learn that way. So they kind of weed themselves out of their own situation. And there's something to be said with, you can't teach old dog new tricks. There's some people that, it always worked this way and they don't like the new way and they refuse to adapt. So you can try and help them, but try to teach grandpa to use his iPhone. Like, it's kind of the same thing, right? Where you give them new tech and it's hard to understand. That's why some people have anxiety with AI. I'm using it on the daily. And it's because I'm like, this thing is giving me better results than Google search ever did, because Google search gives me the top 5 paid for ad responses before I get an actual response that I'm after. You know what I mean? So
for now, yeah.
Now, until you start seeing ads. Oh, this prompt response is brought to you by AT&T.
Well, it's so funny. I was just talking to a marketing guy about that. He's saying the next frontier of marketing now is showing up in the results when somebody asks a question of AI, and not worrying about paid ads as much and, organic search. They're now thinking about, how can I show up in the search results? And apparently, as of now, it's the way that the LLMs figure out credibility is looking for a company or, whatever name that somebody is searching needs to show up in publications and like actual news articles and things. And that's how it determines relevancy or, confidence.
Or reference material on LinkedIn. Yeah. I was messing with a couple of them looking for a few different kind of fields. And I ran across the same thing where I asked it a couple questions and this person's name kept on showing up in my query. And then I did my own research on top of it and just started looking up their name, and they're like literally everywhere, including speaking engagements and whatnot. So they made themselves known, which made the AI know who they are. I was like, if we can maintain it that way and keep it organic, it's worth time. But if somebody actually starts paying for that top result, AI is no better than Google search at that point, and that would suck.
Yeah, well, I hate to be a doomer on that, but it almost seems like an inevitability. If there's money to be made in a different way and somebody figures out how to do that, why not?
Yes and no. And sure, pay for the top slot kind of makes sense. But at the same time, it's not organic, so nobody's going to pay attention to it, just like the ads today. So you're wasting your money there. It'd be better time spent to get whoever you're wanting to get into more publication spaces, like showing up at trade shows, talking about your trade show experience and all things like that. For your example, like your podcast, if you were blasted on 3 different trade shows sites by like 20 different people, all of a sudden you're showing up in the LLM as, which podcast should I be on for this particular subject, right? So it depends. If they make it more organic, I think it has a better shot, but that means marketing also has to be more clever about how they place both their brand and their people in the right space to make themselves more notable. So yeah. It's a game changer for literally everyone.
Well, and you continue to see, and I've talked about this before, how now CISOs you don't see as many more traditional CISO roles these days. It seems like, I don't know if people don't want to pay the money for the salaries for what they view as a cost center, but I certainly see more like advisory CISO and CISO in residence and those kind of market-facing CISO roles where they're in charge of generating awareness for their brand and, and that sort of thing. Advisory CISO. So I've been telling a lot of folks at the executive level I talk to that are having difficulty finding jobs, like you really have to tie yourself to either cost savings or revenue generation. And if you're not able to do either of those two or show tangible results in either of those ways, you're going to struggle in this environment. To your point from earlier, doing more with less. What's the reason for do more with less, I guess? Like, where do you think that stems from, and why has it gotten worse recently over previous years?
I think it's gotten worse recently over previous years, just because I think it's still a fallout a little bit of the nonsense that was COVID. Like it really gutted like the middle market for most application spaces. And even retail markets, like physical infrastructure kind of shops, they were shuttered and shut down for 2.5 years straight. It ruined, like, I can't remember what actual statistic this was, but I think it was somewhere around like 60% of the small to medium businesses that actually had like storefront presence, and some of the digital ones that were online only, gone. They just flat out gone. It ruined all sorts of people. So all those people flooded the market, or tried to open up a new business, or did something of that nature. So they had to rethink their life, right? Well, that in turn changed market pressures, because there's not as many people buying, because no one has the buying power. So now they have to reduce everything, because on the publicly traded side, they're still needing to meet their stakeholder expectations for the board of directors and whatnot, and the shareholders. Otherwise, they get negatively penalized on their stockholder prices and whatnot. Of course, that drives even more things. And then that's when the layoffs starts to happen. COVID laid off, for example, in the oil and gas space when I was there, Chevron alone laid off, I think, 750 people in the IT sector in Houston alone. Like, gone. I was one of them. Many of my colleagues were as well. Some of them were just like, oh, retirement package, thank you, goodbye. Like, they took that instead. And all that market ability made the organizations rethink, we can do things agile, we can do things faster, and we have automation to do things, so we don't have to hire as many people. Not necessarily true, because now they're overworking people. There's a lot of burnout that I've been watching amongst a lot of my cohorts and teams. So the more with less is all about trying to push automation and AI to do things that normal, like the mediocre stuff people wants to use or do. And I don't know where that's going to end up, but I do see a little bit of a squeeze there. Like, not even a little bit. I see a lot of people flooding the market right now, and it's all because organizations are pushing for do more with less, or in my case, I'm just going to do less with less because there's no more there. Like, I'm not going to have my people doing 20-hour days. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly I've seen that play out, and once people are overworked, then they go to look for jobs. But normally they would. But when there's 500 other people that would gladly take their spot because they've been unemployed for 6 months, they have pressure on them to stay. So it doesn't put any pressure on the companies to hire more. Essentially,
it's a rock and a hard place for a lot of people right now. So the market's a little weird. This whole year in particular, I've talked to multiple recruiters, and there's a hiring freeze literally everywhere. Amazon just laid off their layoffs. Google laid off or announced some layoffs, and it's all middle management type people. I kind of think that's an okay thing, because most of those middle management people are also the ones doing the TikTok videos, a day in the life of working at Google, and they're like getting their morning wine or something. It's like, yeah, you clearly weren't working in the first place. So of course they feel like it's bloat. And some of the more rich people in the world, they actually, I think, led the charge. A good example was when Elon bought Twitter. He laid off like 70% of the workforce. Guess what's still running right now? X. And they put an AI on top of it. So AI is integrated with the platform. And they did some other stuff there too. So now it's profitable and not losing money. Like, he canned 70% of the people and made a profitable company, just, I think, because he canned 70% of the people. He's already made his money back in like 2 years. It was just like an easy decision, but you watch how he transformed that industry, and everyone else is like, I might be able to do that too. Well, it puts a lot of people on their butt. So they're out in the curb looking for a job, and the job market's changed. And yeah, it's all at once, and it's making things interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think any big sweeping changes like that, it can look like a really good move maybe in the short term, but then in the medium to long term, maybe not such a great move. Like,
Yeah.
What effect does damaging your brand to the point where nobody ever wants to work for you again? What effect does that have in the long term, for instance? Like, I think at the end of the day, some people are still going to want to go work for Amazon or Google or wherever just because of the paycheck. And maybe that's decreasing now a little bit because there are so many people in the market. As supply and demand. What do we do, I guess, on the hiring side? Like, obviously, there's so many people in the market right now. Any internal recruiter I talk to, any hiring manager, they'll post up a job and get hundreds or thousands of applicants. Small percentage of those are ever what they actually want to hire. Is there any solution to that, do you think?
So there's a couple utilities, and I'm still kind of a mixed feeling on whether or not these are effective. And I got a couple stories I could share of how I feel about that. So there was I went through HR recruiting at a company. I was a manager for work, and I posted a job online. I got 100 resumes within like a day. Out of those 100 resumes, only 10 actually had work experience to the job I was hiring for. Just 10 out of 100. It took me 2 days to filter that myself. I sat down and read through every single resume because I was looking for a person, and the HR recruiter didn't. They just like, here's some people that applied. I'm like, oh, that's nice of you. Let me filter down to 10, and then I got it down to 5, and then I only interviewed those 5. I didn't talk to anybody until I got down to 5 people, and then out of those 5, I picked one. On the flip side of that, same company, I went with recruiting agencies instead. So I went some smaller homegrown shops. I went with some of the bigger guys as well. And they all gave me about 2, maybe 3 people that they have vetted first. And out of those 2 or 3, I found 3 really, really solid people out of like 8 total that I actually looked at. So it was much more targeted, much more poignant, and a better feel for the person I was looking for, and a little bit better on the cultural fit too. It really depended on the recruiter I was talking to. Ended up being the person I chose was an ethics decision. One of them already had a job, the other one did not. So I picked the one that didn't, right? But they were both equally as talented and qualified. So, give the person that's out in the street a little bit more of a chance than the person that still has a job just looking for something better. That's pretty much where that decision went.
That's interesting, and I applaud you for making that decision that way. In fact, I would say of all the biases I see in hiring, one of the most common is we don't want to hire somebody who is currently on the market. They were laid off for a reason. Companies don't lay off their top performers. They always, basically cut the bottom half off of the company when they do layoffs or riffs. So many people I've talked to as hiring managers over the years would make the opposite decision, assuming that there's something wrong with the person who's not currently employed. What's your take on that? Like, why do you think that bias exists?
Well, that bias is placed by bigger companies. GE probably started that like 15 years ago, maybe 20. They used to go through every other year. They go through like an annual layoff. So they go through like basically, if you were in the bottom 10% of the company, you were laid off. But you look at GE's performance, Lean Sigma, and their performance metrics, everyone was pretty much a really solid top performer in any other context except for GE. So in GE, you're not good enough. So they had like this, I'd almost say snobby elitist kind of mentality where, we cut off the top 10% because they're not good enough for GE standards or whatever. In reality, the ones that were kicking some butt, you have human situations where, sure, they didn't make their work visible maybe, or they didn't show that they had the talent, but somebody else was able to take their work and make it look like they had the talent. I've seen that numerous times, and it's absolutely ridiculous. So you can recognize the actual performers from the fake ones. But I think that kind of mentality probably started from senior leaders going through multiple layoffs, and they just kind of decide that it wasn't that the person didn't perform well necessarily. I mean, they might have had some HR problems and whatnot. And yeah, those are kind of red flags. But in reality, let's say that not that they're just laid off because they're not a top performer necessarily, nothing with HR or not whatnot. But what was their standard? And is that standard your standard? And if you're not considering it that way, then you're just basically, what's the term? Shooting yourself in the foot despite yourself, something like that. But that's my take on it. Like I think it's a bad practice, and it's a bad practice because you're going to miss out on good people that just really aren't that kind of social, self-selling person. They might be a little bit self-deprecating, let's say, and in actuality, they can knock it out of the park. They're just not really good at communicating.
Yeah, well, that's a great point, and I can tell you, having worked with a ton of companies as an external recruiter and having worked in a highly political internal recruiting environment, company politics and, who sucks up to who, that can make all the difference when it comes to layoff decisions, not individual performance. I think in hiring, we ought to treat each person as the individual that they are and not make blanket assumptions based on some group or characteristic that they happen to fall into.
Yep.
Hiring decisions
for hiring too.
Sorry, what was that?
I would say the same thing goes for hiring too. That's more of the important part. Like, you're looking for somebody that's going to blend with your company. Skills can be taught. Personality can't be, right? So making sure that they blend with your team and company is more important than the skill package they carry. Yes, it gives them, at least if you want to hit the ground running, you can do some of that. But if they don't fit the culture, you're going to set yourself up for failure anyways.
So that's one of those intangible things that I think sometimes when a hiring decision is made, there can be biases smuggled in when somebody says, quote unquote, not a culture fit. How do you define or screen for culture fit without wandering into bias territory?
I think I'm a little bit different in this space. Culture fit. So a lot of people in more corporate environments will talk about the core company values, the culture of the company of being buzzword, and not exactly agreeing to their vision of corporate culture, because that's that. Or they'll use that as an excuse to negate somebody that might be a threat to their own position. I've seen that happen a couple times too. And the reality of it is, when a hiring manager is looking to hire somebody, they shouldn't be looking for somebody that they shouldn't be worrying, I should say, about somebody they're about to hire that could be a potential threat to their position. And you could be hiring somebody that could replace you, and you could mentor them to be excellent in their position, to take your position when you decide to retire or move up, right? It's a little bit short-sighted in my opinion, in that entire space. My personal approach is a little bit different, and that's why I don't know if it works for everyone, but I look to see if they have the core values that I value in my team. And that's, half of it being cybersecurity. I value integrity. If you can't be honest with me, you're not going to be on my team, plain and simple. So one of the great questions I ask is, depending on the role, I'll ask something specific to the role. And if you try to BS me through it because I know how that works, I'm not hiring you. Plain and simple. But if I ask you this question, you're like, that's a good question. I don't know how to do that. I would sooner hire that person than I would have hired the person that tried to tell me how they would do it and it failed to, what they told me. Definitely not going to work. But that's the kind of thing I want to test for, is if they're going to fit within my culture of my team, and by and large, the greater culture of the company. And the culture of the company can be different because there's always cliques. Like, you're not going to jive with the people in finance. They have a different mindset than IT people. Cyber people are cynics. So if I'm hiring for a cyber team, are you cynical as well? Like, what's your kind of personality? Are you going to work well with your team or not? Like, those kind of things are, I think, matter more than the skill set they're bringing to the table.
Yeah. Well, I think if you do a couple of things, one, you just make sure that personality wise and communication skill wise, they can get along with the people on your team. That's kind of it's not even a science. It's more of an art. That's something you can kind of assess just as a human, but then evaluating their current the way I look at it is they have a current skill floor. This is bare minimum of what they can offer today to our company skill set wise. But then think about where is this person going to be in 5 years? At what level are they going to be performing in 5 years? What's their future skill ceiling? Not just where are they at currently today. And I think that matters more when you look at long-term performance in a given company and a team. Those people that are always striving and want to be up on the latest, to your point from earlier, that are not getting outdated in their knowledge, and they're constantly pursuing new knowledge. Maybe even if they have less knowledge today, they'll have more in 6 months than that person you hired today with a greater skill floor but lower skill ceiling. So the thing, hiring is part art, part science, and it's important to have some science in there. You don't want it to be all art, but there's an aspect to it there, I think.
Something you just mentioned struck an idea. What's missing on people's resumes when they come in to apply? It's all about previous work experience, what you've done in that field and things like that. And it's less about what you are doing or are continuing to do. Does that make sense? Like sometimes you'll see a certification on there. Yeah, I totally took the CISSP, like for myself, or things like that, but they took it like 6 years ago. It doesn't tell me like, yeah, I read like 6 books a day and watch like 7 podcasts. I listen to LinkedIn earnings all the time. I run my own LLM on my local machine. Like those things will come out in an interview, but where is that in the resume to make me even interested in you in the first place?
Yeah.
I don't see that kind of stuff on there.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, some of the advice I'll give to entry level folks is to have your special projects on there, because that shows that you're passionate about the field and, you describe your home lab and all that good stuff. But yeah, experienced people don't get that advice, which is interesting. Well, I think it's probably driven from the hiring side, because hiring managers, and I've said this before, they want to hire somebody who's not a risk, essentially, in most cases, which is why they default to hiring somebody who's done the exact same job at a direct competitor in the same industry, has all the tech stack that they're already working with, that they're avoiding as much risk as possible. Whereas, and so that's what the candidates then put on their resumes to show what they've done before, because that's what they're being hired for, essentially, is their previous experience, not what they're looking to do or may be capable of in the future or what they're learning. But yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to see what I'm working on now or what I'm accomplishing in the next year section on a resume. That could be a good selling
I think
point.
It would be pretty good, because it kind of drops, like you see those in college resumes. Like I do, whatchamacallit, they have like little programs, and I did this at Chevron, I do this where I'm at now, where the recruiters will go to colleges and they have like a work rotation program where you jump like 3 jobs in like 2 years, something like that. And the college kids are literally straight out of college. Like they're going to graduate this year, and we're interviewing them right now because they graduate in like March. Right. And they'll go through, and you look at those resumes and it's like, they did a work study here. They did an intern project there. They do this currently. Like you see special projects more than you see work experience. But then at one point in time, all those special projects disappear, and all you get is relative work experience for your last however long. For myself, some of those older generations trying to keep ourselves a little bit more relevant, we may hide the fact that I've been in the IT industry for 30 years because that'll date me. And so there's some age bias there. They'll find out if we get into a candid conversation later, obviously, but it's, and especially if I leave this on here, the gray kind of gives it away too. But it's, I'll see it in both ends of the spectrum. Like, where did that passion and interest go? It disappears off your resume the moment you get like 5 years worth of experience at a company. That, I think it's an interesting tactic that maybe somebody should bring back. That would be kind of nice. It would at least show me on a resume that somebody is still wanting to learn and adapt, versus having to ask that question in an interview.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you'll actually see it on the other side on job descriptions. I think some of the better written job descriptions will address that sort of thing. And it won't just be in canned cliche language, like we're looking for passionate people that are continuous learners and blah, blah, blah. It'll be more like, what are you working on in your free time? We want to know. I'll see that on a job description, which those companies are treating the job description more like a job ad, really, where they understand that they need to sell the person looking for the job at least a little bit, so they can actually get them excited on the front end. A lot of hiring managers will get upset if somebody doesn't have a good reason why they want the job when they've been out of work for 6 months. It's like, well, I want a paycheck, man. Like, I have a family to feed here, So, but if you can get somebody, if you can actually make it a point to get somebody excited about your company and the role on the front end of the process before they've had a chance to do a ton of research, they're going to be more excited. But if they're applying to 100 positions a week, it's hard for them to get excited about any single role, especially when they're worried about their bills,
Yeah, and like the story I gave before, where I picked the person that didn't have a job, like they demonstrated to me that they were fully qualified. One of the cliche questions I asked that normally people would tell me I don't know how to do that. This person did, and then they offered me like a dissertation level diagram, like I guess an architectural diagram would be more accurate of what I received, of how they would do it. And that was post interview. They're like, yeah, totally, this is how I would do it. And it was definitely not AI written. I double checked for that. But it was thoroughly impressive, because I guess it was a paper that they wrote or something of that nature. It struck me as somebody that really cares, but they were like also in a situation where I need work yesterday. And if I don't have it yesterday, I'm screwed. There has to be some human compassion in the hiring process, or else I don't know. It might be just me. I think you're also right in the sense where people are looking at the risk factor. I'm a little more not risk averse. I'm open to some risk in that space, because people are easy to train. Personalities are not. You can't change personality. I find that to be more valuable. That's probably why I do it the way I do.
Yeah. Well, and I'm kind of interested in psychology just on a personal level, and personality, to your point, is one of those things that changes very little over the course of somebody's career or life. Like, it does go up or down a few points in a few of the metrics, or the five, what do they call them?
The big five?
Yeah, the big five. Yeah. So they'll go up or down a little bit, but you don't do a 180 on your personality traits over your life.
No, they never deviate except for in major life events. So tragic death in the family, somebody or death of a friend that super close, or let's say you got missing a limb for some reason, or you're at a job and somebody, like, you definitely get jilted in such a way that it leaves a meaningful impact, maybe even blackballs you in some cases. Those type of situations will alter personality, but they're few and far between, and it all depends on how you react to them. So it's not 100% guaranteed that any of those are going to change. By and large, it really stays static.
Yeah, well, and context is everything too. If somebody's personality changes for the negative, possibly by a couple of points because something awful happened to them, I would say that's probably pretty understandable. Yeah,
it really depends on what it is. Like, but absolutely, yeah. It can be. It may not actually be negative. It shifted in the other direction. Like, if you know the big five scale, it depends on which end of that spectrum, because they are spectrums in each one of the five. They shifted to, like, from altruism to narcissism. Like, how much did you shift in that? If you went more narcissistic, you might have gotten jaded by something. So it depends on what that spectrum is, and it actually will kind of get back to normal the further away you get, the further time goes away from the trauma too. So, yeah.
Well, and that makes me think about hiring too. Every hiring decision, I think, should be contextual, because people are full of context. You can't look at anything in a vacuum, basically. Like, okay, maybe they didn't finish their degree, and maybe that was a requirement that we had on the job description. Yet there's a good reason for it. They had to take care of their sick mother. And in the meantime, they were studying and doing all these things for free, because that's what they were able to afford, given the financial situation they were in. That's a good story. And I think so much of being a good candidate is being able to tell a story and being able to justify why you're a good fit for the role, the company. If you're able to explain away any short-term positions that you've had, or if you were let go, what was the reason behind that without sounding too negative, and spinning it in such a way that you're you're capable of being positive in your next role. I feel like so much of this is about storytelling and being self-aware, both as a hiring manager and as a recruiter. That self-awareness is key. Like, what are your strengths as a hiring manager? And how do those relate to the person that you're hiring? And, maybe some of the traits you're looking for don't necessarily match up the best with the existing team, just, it seems like a lot to think about, I guess.
Yeah, it's a different approach though. Like you go into the psychology of it, and like I have my doctorates in org psych, so it's kind of a second nature to me to kind of think different in that space. But not everyone's like that. They got hard requirements. They got some things that they need to meet. They could be mandated by the company, so therefore they don't even think about it. If it says bachelor's on the job rec, that if they don't have a bachelor's, goodbye. It's a reason. HR people do this a lot too. Through their ATS system or otherwise, they'll weed people out automatically through the AI in their hiring agent utility. The automated talent system, ATS, will if you don't meet the set minimum requirements that they have set inside the utility, you get excluded. Like you're below the percentage point of actually meeting this. You don't have our right keywords. You do not have your degrees, all that fun stuff. And it weeds you out programmatically at that point. So you don't even make the cut on the regular job hiring stuff because the automated system is weeding you out.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more common, it seems. I still do everything very manually. Like to your point from earlier, when you worked with the external recruiting firms, you got a couple of people that were way more on target. And I would guess that those recruiting firms had done outbound sourcing, headhunting, went out and found those people versus posting a job and praying and hoping the right person came along. Of their 1,000 applicants, they weeded through all 1,000 and they got to the perfect 2. It's like, no, they probably went out and found people that are more likely to be a fit based on keywords, but then did those in-depth screens and made sure that they met all the requirements. I mean, some of this stuff, because LinkedIn especially doesn't have an API that likes to work with any external tool. So you can't automate sourcing through LinkedIn if you're sending in mails, I've found, and I've done research on this. They just don't like to play nice with automatic sourcing of any kind. So you're either forced to send emails through automatic sourcing if you want to go outbound, or you manually do it through LinkedIn and send in mails like I do. But I think the proof is in the pudding. If you're getting good results doing things manually, do it that way until it doesn't make sense to do it that way anymore. But I think so many companies and internal hiring managers and recruiting teams, they're focusing on these inbound applications because they don't know what else to do. Maybe the recruiters aren't competent enough to understand the keywords well enough to go out and find people, so they have to rely on the applications. Or the hiring manager like yourself is forced to go through the applications because the recruiters don't know what they're looking for. But yeah, there's really no shortcut, I don't think, to expertise and knowing how to find people. That's something that accrues over time generally.
I actually found that to be the same thing. And one interesting thing about LinkedIn that I recently found out, like within the last month or so, I think the reason why their APIs don't work as well. I actually tried to use LLM to do some surfing, just to use an AI to try and mine LinkedIn for like job postings and whatnot that are not actually posted on LinkedIn, but done in chat in some way or form, which are like hidden posts and whatnot. Because one of the recruiters was telling me that it totally works. Trust me, bro. So I tried it myself. I'm like, yeah, it didn't work as you thought it would. But what I found is LinkedIn actually, I think it's a marketing and revenue stream. So recruiters have a license they can purchase to get LinkedIn Recruiter. It gives you a back-end plan that shows all different connections to different people, hiring managers, what tier they're at. It lets you organize your connections in space as a recruiter view. And I actually got to see the back end of this not too long ago. And this one recruiter, I like her a lot. She's actually moving to the Dallas area to do recruiting in that space. I've worked with her for quite a while, but I've never actually hired anybody. One of the 3 people I thought about hiring came from them, but their skill set in the wrong space. And I kind of needed somebody to hit the ground running, as it were. But out of the people they sent me, everyone was freaking solid. And when she showed me the back end of the LinkedIn recruiter space, she was able to pull up me, who I'm a direct, one-to-one. So I'm on the first in their link. It showed her all of my firsts, where she's at with those firsts, what position they are, and then all the seconds and all that. It like had a whole there's a book. God, it's an old book. 7 Steps to Kevin Bacon. I will never forget this book. It's like 50 pages long. It's a ridiculous book. And what it goes over is, if you go through your own first layer of context, people you know, your friends and whatnot, 7 steps in any one of those directions from the people that you know, one of those people are around layer 5 to 7 will know Kevin Bacon as a person. Like, they've met him, they've talked to him, I got a selfie with him, that type of thing. 7 Steps Out is what it was called. 7 Steps to Kevin Bacon. And Kevin Bacon wrote it. So it was kind of an interesting social experiment at how more we're connected as people than we actually realize we are. Well, I was thinking about this this week, in fact, that LinkedIn's just like that. The people you have connected, you're 2 or 3 steps away from the hiring manager that will probably hire you. You just need to look through your own network to see it. And it's kind of creepy. I was looking at, I'm connected to a lot of, CISOs and whatnot in my space, and I'm starting to look at some of the other people they're connected to. And of course, there's 50 recruiters that are connected to them. I was like, oh, that's how they're playing that game on the back end of LinkedIn, is they're first level connected to these guys, but they're also connected to the hiring managers that report to this guy, because maybe the CISO is not the one hiring, but the DevOps manager is, and the SOC manager is, and the GRC architect might be hiring a couple people, and they're all first to the CISO, and they're connected to the CISO, so you can see that tree down. That's, if there was no ethics involved there, that is straight up social hacking. Because it's pretty fun to think about. Yeah,
you could map a hierarchy pretty easily. I have both Sales Navigator on LinkedIn that I pay for. It's like $100 a month. And then I have LinkedIn Recruiter, which is like $500 a month. And I get 100 InMails with it. But I have a completely different view with LinkedIn Recruiter than regular LinkedIn users have. But and they haven't updated the functionality in so long, but you have to have the InMails to recruit in security, because that's how people prefer to be approached. I've thought about doing these automated sourcing things, but people don't like you scraping the internet for their email if they're working in security. So
it leaves I will admit, it leaves a little bit of sour taste in my mouth, because I look at it and first off, how did you get this email that I don't use for this particular context? So I don't trust you already. And then how did you get my work email? Because I only use that for public speaking events and not what you're doing. So I usually ignore those. It's kind of a sus move, in my opinion. If I don't reach out to you, why are you reaching out to me? That's the first thing I ask.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what industry specialization gets, is you realize these intangibles over time. And like I said, there's really, it seems like no shortcuts. Well, we're coming up on time and running out of it. So Glenn, just one last question for you. Is there anything we're not talking about in the industry, but we should be, especially as it relates to hiring?
Now is the time to skill up, not just in hiring, but, you should always be skilling up, right? But I am seeing a dramatic and hard push from the board level on down. We need AI. That is the thing everyone is talking about right now. I have not heard a single event that I've gone to that didn't shut up in some way about AI. I was at USecCon. I was presenting a method. My presentation was how to use a regenerative framework to create a logic bomb and Trojan horse inside of an application. I did an AI presentation as well. So even I am not shutting up about it, right? But the truth of the matter is, I have a son, and the best example, I have a son, he's sophomore U of H, right? I have told him, you're learning Python, great, learn how to code in AI. And he's like, what do you mean by that? It's by the time you graduate, there will be a ton of AI jobs, AI developers, prompt engineers, that kind of thing. It is going to be a massive hot job market. Right now, everybody's in the buzz of laying everyone off because they're making space potentially to hire these people. Or they think AI can solve everything, and then they realize they automated everything and they don't know how to fix the AI that's automated at all. Now it's doing stupid things, right? Because it got corrupted data somehow. The job market is shifting hard toward AI, and if you don't have those skills, you will be left behind.
Yeah, it would seem to me you could fall into one of two buckets. Like, I think there's going to continue to be people facing people to people jobs, and then we're going to have the more technical jobs, and maybe not everybody's cut out to be one or the other, and they should focus on the other one. But you got to go where the jobs are, where the industry is headed.
Yeah, well, even in the people to people jobs, you will be using AI to help regulate, control your schedule. You don't need to use Candidly or anything else like that. It'd be like, hey, my contact over here for this company, can you tell me his availability so I can set up a schedule and have my next contact call with him? Like, it'll be able to search somebody else's email availability, potentially. As scary as that sounds, I don't see any reason why a marketing research fund of people could not sift through somebody's regular, normal schedule, somebody talking on somewhere else, to find out when they're available and when they're not, so I can have a quick call with so-and-so about a sales opportunity. Like, those things will be up next, So AI is gonna hard shift a few weird behaviors for people, and it's gonna hit fast.
Yeah. Well, a lot to think about. So appreciate your time, Glenn. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to do so?
You can reach me on LinkedIn, of course. /Dr. Glen Vickers is my LinkedIn profile. Beyond that, I tend to not put anything else out there, so that's probably the safest way to contact me.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for your time, Glenn. Thanks, everybody.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Talent Gap Fireside Chat. Don't forget to follow our page on LinkedIn and like and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube. Hit that notification bell to be notified when we drop a new episode. New episodes air every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern.